Let's Get Tryin is a podcast that challenges us to live real and authentic lives, no matter the journey we're on, from life to faith to even mental health. Host Aaron Lee presents the importance of never giving up. So let's get Tryin with Aaron Lee.
Yo, what is happening, podcast family? So glad that you're here for another episode of Let's Get Tryin. I'm thrilled to have my best friend Bryan back on the podcast for another episode. That's 3 in a row. I'm super pumped about that, to talk about what can be a very touchy topic, but we're going to talk about anxiety and how it's affected by the political season that we're in. So we're recording this episode prior to the election, and you'll hear me mention that. But the thing is I have no idea who's going to be our next president. And quite frankly, we're not getting into the political candidates as much as how the anxieties can arise from this stuff, and more importantly, how we should act coming out of these things. So as things play out, we need to be good people. I think this is a very timely episode for this season that we're in right now. But before we get into the interview, I just really feel that I need to, I'm just going to plead, to be completely honest. I really need your help. It's just been kind of going downhill in regards to the numbers in which we've been receiving shares and stuff like that on social media. And hear me when I say this. I'm just trying to be real and transparent with you. I want to know that this is being a help to people. And I know numbers don't matter, but if you could help just share this with people, the goal is really to have a community. And it's not a community unless people are engaging and people are sharing and people are just there for one another. And so anyway, I say all that to plead with you. Please rate, review, and share the podcast. I know that sounds kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but it just feels kind of weird for me to even ask you to do that. But it's not about me. It's about getting the podcast out there to help people. That is my ultimate goal, is to help people live real and be authentic through vulnerable living and not give up on life. That's why we call it Let's Get Tryin. So again, please do that for us. That would be really, really helpful. All right, let's get into this conversation with my buddy Bryan about how anxiety can be affected in this season of political tension and how we should act during this season as well. So let's get to it. Hey, Bryan, thanks for jumping back on this episode and joining us for a season, or in a season of magical rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah, buddy.
Hey, we're recording this episode prior to the election, and so we are unclear. We don't have a crystal ball or anything like that.
True.
That's not Christianese. Anyway, I don't know who the winner of the election is. You may not know who the winner of the election is, but for anybody, whoever it may be, you may need to think about how you're going to act and how you're going to respond. And you've probably been pretty anxious about it leading up to this point. So we just want to talk about some practical things, some important things that would make us better people, especially when we're feeling that anxiety of things. And on top of that, make us more authentic and living real vulnerable lives when things are not going the way we would hope. It's okay to feel that, but we also have to respond in some very important ways, and especially if we're Christians.
Yeah.
So Bryan, let's talk for a minute. Let's talk about, in particular, this has been a season of inserts in your mailbox, of ad campaigns, of presidential debates that was like Jerry Springer. So man, how do we live in a world like this? What do we do? Like, how do we be positive? How do we live authentic lives? What do we do?
Yeah, man, that's so true. I mean, who does not love election season? Woo, right?
Yeah.
That's what everybody shoots for right there, man. No, you want to talk about just, you think about what we've been through from, COVID-19 and still just lingering on in the fight of that whole mess, coming out of this. Of course, you got the racial injustices and all the riots and all those things that have been going on. And then you go right into the election. And I mean, this is a journey for folks that, man, you have, I mean, not to mention our own personal lives where just got mess going on.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, to really put this in context, what people are going through right now is just a long wear and tear on them.
Yeah.
And right now, your guy may look like he might be winning or he might be losing, but either way, it's, how do we act? How do we behave in the midst of this season, able to be authentic, but man, hopefully authentic in the right things for the right purposes.
Absolutely.
And it be something that is what's coming out of you and in a true way is something that is built on a foundation that is not as fragile as this world.
Yeah, that's good. I'm the type person, and you know this, Bryan, but I'm the type person who I carry a lot of weight on my shoulders with anxiety and that kind of stuff. So no matter what I believe politically, I carry the weight of division. So when the world feels divided, my natural response is I try to pick up that load. Like I try to carry that load or I just feel weighed down by it.
Yeah.
And I know there's many people who probably carry that too. There's some people who are probably their political party. They want them to win. They want to see, change happen or someone to stay in place or whatever it may be, but they're anxious about that. And, I'm the type person who wrestles with, man, what do I do with that? What do I do with this anxiety? Because I truly believe I want unity to take place.
Oh, absolutely.
Even when I don't fully agree with one side or the other, I want unity to take place.
Yeah.
And when we don't see unity happen, it causes more and more anxiety on us. One, I have to step back. So that's the first thing I have to do personally is step back from things like social media, things like the news. I can't engulf myself in that because if I do, I will carry that anxiety in such a very, very dark way, not in a way that's healthy. Because there's sometimes anxiety can give you a good tension, a good rub to propel you into good things. But this type of anxiety, I think, can really mess with people.
Yeah.
So, man, what does someone like me do? How do I live in a world where I'm anxious and I got to keep going?
Yeah, man. And that's the thing is I think that you're sitting in a seat that a lot of people feel knowing your story and knowing how, what you went through as a kid and broken relationships and kind of anybody out there among us who have been in a household or been in a school or as you grew up or in relationships where there's been tension or brokenness. You think about all the kids out there, all the adults now, or you think about, growing up in a household where there was split and division between parents and they're fighting and arguing. And so that same core, anxious concern within your soul, we all can relate to it to some degree. And man, if you haven't felt something in the midst of this crazy season, you're superhuman or something, or you're
really
living out on a treetop somewhere. And maybe part of that is the case. I think what you'd mentioned about taking a step back in perspective is so important. For all of us, I like to call it, what stirs your affections for Jesus? That's kind of a phrase that I've always looked at. Everybody's unique in that. Like for some folks, what stirs your affections for the things, and maybe do it in this way is if you're just still walking towards Jesus and figuring that out, what stirs your affections for that which truly matters, what is truly at the depth of really matters, what stirs your affections towards that, and so for me, the outdoors. So there's something about being outdoors and being in the presence of some cool breeze and looking up at a night sky that helps me begin to realize there is something way beyond my situation that is true, that has a deeper overall reality than what I'm currently in. and it helps me see things from a different perspective. So if I'm in the midst of the fight, in the midst of the trees, in the midst of the war, for me, I'll be anxious and overwhelmed, really, of what's going on around me and not being able to be in control of it all. And with there being so much out of my control, it makes me, man, really struggle with that. But there's something about taking a step back, getting myself in a place that stirs my affections for the real things that matter, that helps me look back on these things with a better sense of reality, a more clarity. And whether that's a clarity of how to have humility that somebody won or didn't, or whether or not to have joy, even though the person that I wanted to have be in this position happen or not.
Yeah. That's good. And the humility thing's huge, because that's really hard, especially when it's something we don't agree with or believe in or whatever. So authenticity to me, and this is the way we communicate it, is it's when our internal values and our external actions line up.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people may say they internally value other people, may internally value love and this connection and unity, but is our values externally being, are they the same? So the challenge that I think we have to walk in is, do you practice what you really believe?
Mm.
And that may be the opposite thing of what it should be. Your value may actually not be in loving other people.
Yeah.
Your value may not be in empathy and mourning with those who mourn and rejoicing with those who rejoice. And, then maybe your actions need to match that.
Yeah.
But I think the way to live a Christ life is that it's that empathy for one another, and that, so stepping back, seeing people as human, seeing them as, hey, just because this person doesn't believe the same thing as you, it's not something that should make you hate. It's not something that should make you angry about that person. The reality is people are brought up differently than you. People are brought up thinking and believing different things, that, we're not out to change people's minds. We're out to show them Jesus. And really, that's the way we should live. And I'm learning this. I'm not great about it, but I'm learning that when I step back from those things and it's the chaos of it all.
Yep.
So, right, when we step on social media, or we turn on the TV, or we open up that website for that news outlet, it's chaos.
Yep.
It's a million sounds just coming at us. And we may still know what we believe, but it's hard for anybody to hold themselves together in that.
Yeah.
So taking yourself out of it for a time is good. For me, it's taking myself out of it and rooting myself in God's word.
Yeah.
In a way that I know his voice, so that I'm not confused by all these other voices.
Yeah, man.
And I think that goes whether you're hearing this before the election's over, or you're hearing this after the election's over. The same thing applies.
Absolutely.
It'll apply 100 years from now.
Yep.
Because if we allow the chaos to drown out the voice of God, that's our choice.
Yeah.
That happens. So that's one challenge I'm having to learn in my own life, because I can easily jump on social media and get depressed fast, get anxious really, really fast, and then forget what God's word tells me.
You mentioned a couple practical steps in terms of stepping back. I think another one, which was extremely helpful for me, about 4 or 8 years ago, depending on as these election seasons come, is I had to take a fast. Like I had to take a fast from things that was robbing me from the things that matter and affecting me beyond the things that should. And so for me, I had to, there were things I enjoyed doing while driving down the road. I enjoy listening to different stations and different, whether it be a podcast or whether it be a video or YouTube or wherever it may be, and hearing about just what's going on and who said what and who's going to do what and what does this mean, and trying to be informed and all those things. And I realized that, okay, I inform myself so I can make a good decision. And then once I made that decision, I realized that everything past that point, for me, I could take a fast from it because it wasn't doing good for me or my family. It wasn't doing good for me and my relationships. And so I had to taking that step back helped me evaluate what's this actually doing to my life right now.
Oh yeah, so good.
You know, is this necessary? Is it really necessary for me to be as involved in this as I am, as emotional as I feel, as hurt as I am, as happy as I am? Whatever my emotions are, taking that step back and that authenticity of looking like when you're matching up what's coming out of your values and you're seeing what's bubbling up from the surface. Some of the things you're going, look, you know, as a Christian, I died myself. And I'm new in Him, and so some of this old me, I'm giving some oxygen to, and I'm trying to give it CPR, trying to make it come back to life, and I got to let it die.
Yeah.
There's some things that I'm chasing after here, man, that I need to let it die. This is not who I'm supposed to be. That's not who I want to be. That's not who I really am anymore. And I'm letting these things be owned by this half truth that being well informed means that I should be all the way in. And being controlled by that which I can't control.
That's really good because I think there's an influence in that chaos thing. Fasting works against that. I love what you said there because that is
it's the ultimate quieting.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it just pushes everything out and says, "Hey, stop." I was thinking about this when it comes to you may have a friend that's on the opposite side of the political party line. I don't think it's wrong for you to sit down with that person and be vulnerable and say, here's why I'm anxious. And don't get into the candidate stuff, but get into like the things that are important to you and that you believe and that are just something that you value and have an open dialogue with that person across the line, or even person that believes the same things as you. That's okay too. But I think there's something healthy about if you can have good conversation with someone that may not have the same views as you, but you help them understand you better. That's the unity that this country needs.
Yep.
That's the unity that we need to have in a way that we can actually talk to each other. Because I'm going to be real frank in saying this. I think there was probably a season decades ago where we might have disagreed, but we had one enemy.
Yep.
And we were together. Now I feel like we're enemies of each other. And that is a very dangerous place for us to be.
Yeah.
And it's got more to do with us as individuals than it does with politics. And it's some of the stuff we've talked about in the past of authentic relationships, knowing each other well, understanding each other's struggles. You know, somebody may feel passionately about something because of their childhood or something, or their family in a different area of the country, or, you know what I'm saying? And when we can hear from one another, it doesn't mean we always have to agree.
Yeah.
But what it does is break down some tense barriers that keep us from loving one another.
And I think that, you know, walking in humility when it comes to these things, you know, when you walk in with self-righteous or, you know, with pride and arrogance, versus walking in with a humble spirit and a loving, caring, honest sincerity, you know, that goes a long ways. What we have, I have some people that, are really solid, loving, caring, godly people that disagree on some things politically than where I'm at. But their values are good, right, and true. And we may disagree on how we see those things flushing out. But when we walk humbly and walk alongside each other, we can have some amazing conversations about, you know, kind of where this comes from and understanding the why of what the person that you're sitting across from. I think a lot of times we see all the what that we disagree with, but understanding the why, a lot of times the why is not selfishness. The why, especially among brothers in Christ, it's not necessarily of these evil motives.
Right.
Some of these are authentically decent, good reasons for why they feel the way they feel. Like you said, it could be from a childhood thing. It could be from just the way in which their family was affected. It could be from their historical background. There's lots of reasons why somebody came to where they are today. And I think that walking humbly in that and realizing that, man, I'm not saying I'm wrong on this stance or not, but I want to say that I am open to the conversation, to being able to do things that are not necessarily black and white. There are areas that we have to be honest that, the Constitution isn't the Bible.
Right.
These laws are not necessarily the Bible. Like putting things in proper place in terms of value is important. And to realize that, man, I heard one, amazing Christian teacher said that, God didn't come as Jesus on this earth to ride on the backs of elephants or donkeys. He came to take over.
Yeah.
And so there was a reality that he wasn't trying to come and ride on one side or the other. He came to take over. And so if this is taking over your life because a donkey and an elephant won, then maybe you realize that, man, I need to be taken over by Christ.
Amen.
Rather than taken over by a party. And that says a lot about how you are, man, right now, the level in which you're letting it own you. It may be a little bit not your fault because you've just been in it and didn't realize you're so far ingrained, you're so deep in it that you need to start taking some steps out to see it a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, I love that because we kind of pigeonhole Jesus into this political box either way. And that's not what he was about. That's actually what people misunderstood back then.
Yeah,
And they
true.
misunderstood that Jesus wasn't about that. And he's about love and unity and drawing us back to him. We get caught up in the laws and rules and those kind of pieces. That brings up an interesting thing for me. Why is it so say our candidate doesn't win?
Yeah.
Well, has God given up? Has God stopped caring? Where's God in all of it?
Yeah, man. I think that's I think the reality of what people feel that, and zooming out a little bit, you can see that happening across the world, that there's people that get into positions of power that you're going, oh man, what does this mean? What's going to happen from here? And I guess the reality of this really exposes your trust of God. Do I trust that God can take something that is a mess and make it beautiful? Do I trust that God works in the mess?
Yeah.
And again, you go back to what you're talking about with Jesus and his political system and what he walked into. He took their fears and hatred of someone becoming a king and used it to redeem humanity.
Wow.
So he took the very thing, politically speaking, is why they murdered him, was in fears of him claiming to be this king of the Jews and that he was going to be taking over in a political way, that they were so afraid of that they decided to kill him. Is there anything more devastating, horrible than Jesus dying? I mean, the disciples were walking around for a few days going, this is bad news. Like, we got to be scared and hiding. But what he showed was that even in the midst of the most horrific political climate, he made the most beautiful thing come from it. He actually took that, which was the most terrible of a situation, and he made the most beautiful redemptive story in the history of anything. And so for us is look at this and go, man, if God can take that which was so politically driven and broken and come from that, make the most beautiful sacrifice for humanity, then how is it he could not walk into this mess and go, let me show you what new life looks like that can come from a broken world? And I think that's what, either way you're in this thing, and no matter who gets elected, it's going to be a broken world, but we're going to see that if we allow him to, God can make something beautiful in this mess.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I never really thought of it that way, of how Jesus used it to redeem, used it in that way to kind of turn it for his good.
Yeah.
I think back to Joseph and that whole, what the enemy meant for evil.
Yes.
God uses for good. No matter what, like the enemy is going to use, no matter what political party is in charge, the enemy is going to use something for evil, but God is going to turn it for good. He's going to make it good. And we may not see that even in our lifetime. And that's where faith has to be even stronger. And it makes it real, man, it makes it really difficult. It's like planting a seed and not getting to see the harvest.
No doubt.
Man, that is not a super fun thing. It's like, okay, well, I don't get the rewards of this.
Yeah.
But if we believe in God's power to redeem humanity, we have to trust in his will and his desire to draw us back to him and how he's going to speak.
Fastest growing church in the world is in a climate that they claim that church wasn't allowed to happen in China. The fastest, largest movement of people having a saving relationship with Jesus was in a place in which they were no longer going to allow them to meet and talk about Jesus. And that's right now. That's not like, this is like in the last decade. This isn't like 2,000 years ago that we were talking about. I mean, this is just another example of, hey, man, there is in a weird way, and I've started to experience this in my own life, like with my wife and cancer, brokenness of our past. We talked about the relationship that me and you, how we grew together in relationship. The question would be is if we didn't have brokenness, would we have had that thing to get healed together over? Yeah. And so there's so much here that you can look at and go, in some ways, I'm excited when I see broken because I have seen redemption. Yeah. And man, when you see something go from broken to beautiful, and you've seen that over and over in your life, when you start seeing messes, you hear somebody comes in just a complete mess, you're going, oh man, you just wait until God gets a hold of this one. Like you because you're excited to see what God has done throughout history, through your own personal life. And, you know, as you get older, you look back and you see God doing these things. And man, before you know it, you're looking at these situations differently and you're going to go, man, God is going to do amazing things in this.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think about God in his just endless alpha, omega. God already sees it. God already knows it. Like, why not trust the guy that has already seen it and already knows it?
No doubt.
I know that's a little easier said than done. But with that being said, I believe that no matter what things are like, I want to end us with this challenge is be people of love.
Yeah.
Be like Jesus. Don't be like the world. And the world is going to scream. The world's going to yell. The world's going to destroy. The world's going to just do whatever it's going to do because it wants heaven. And heaven's not here yet. I'm not convinced it's not coming soon, but in my opinion, we have to be like Jesus. And Jesus is clearly all about love.
No doubt.
Well, man, thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of this episode again. I always appreciate your insight. You're so wise, dude. And it means a lot to me that you would bring your insight into this. And hopefully you all know, like, we are not perfect. No. We don't know all the answers. And Lord knows we were nervous about doing anything that had to do with politics.
True.
But we have not talked about any politicians. So
That's right.
Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, dude.
All right. I hope that was helpful to you. You know, we're releasing this episode the day after the election. So in all reality, you may already know who the president is, or it may still be undecided right now based on voting and counting and all that stuff. But the goal here was not to talk about that stuff as much as it is to talk about how we deal with the anxiety we're feeling, how we deal with the disagreeing that we're feeling in our country right now, and how to be more like Jesus. So like we talked about, that's what this is about. And it has to always be with us starting with ourselves individually and checking our hearts to say, hey, Lord, how do you want to use me to show love? And we do that through our interactions with people, physically out in the world. And we also do that through social media and how we interact with people posting things or how we post things and all that jazz. So anyway, just be like Jesus. That is the most important thing for us to do, is lean into him and be like him. Well, like I said earlier, please consider rating, reviewing, and sharing the podcast. This has been a great episode. We'll have more to come. I love you all. As always, live real, be authentic, and let's get trying.